Welcome back to the Developmental Gap podcast with your hosts, Dylan Kane and Jose Franco. In episode 17, Dylan sits down with Jonathan Pinero, the head coach of the John Jay Campus Jaguars baseball team, to dissect an absolutely thrilling and unforgettable 2026 season. It was a year defined by grit, explosive offenses, and a heartbreakingly close run at the crown. The Jaguars kicked off their campaign on March 24th with a tight 5-4 victory over James Madison High School, only to drop a narrow 4-3 rematch to them 2 days later. They bounced back immediately on March 27th, edging out Tottenville 4-3, but stumbled on April 1st in an 8-4 loss to Abraham Lincoln High School. From there, John Jay caught absolute fire. After a forfeit victory over FDR, they shut out Curtis High School 3-0 on April 17th, handled New Dorp 4-1 on April 21st, and then completely unleashed their offense. They pulverized New Utrecht 19-1 and Susan E. Wagner 21-2 before closing out early May with a 19-0 shutout against Fort Hamilton and back-to-back dominant wins over Midwood 13-3 and 10-0. They wrapped up their regular series against Brooklyn Technical High School with two hard-fought victories, winning 4-3 and 7-4. When the PSAL playoffs arrived, the Jaguars looked unstoppable. They blanked Bronx Science 2-0, pushed past George Washington 4-2, and handled Morris Educational Campus 4-2. In a fierce three-game battle against Grand Street Campus, John Jay dropped a game 4-3, but took the other two 7-4 and 5-4 to punch their ticket to the big stage. But as fate would have it, the championship fairy tale fell just short. In the PSAL City Championship game at Staten Island University Hospital Community Park, the Jaguars fought valiantly but ultimately fell 4-2 to Tottenville High School, finishing as the proud city championship runners-up alongside their hard-fought run in the competitive Monroe tournament. History, however, has a funny way of coming full circle. Coach Jonathan Pinero's own high school coach, the legendary Mike Hanrahan, actually won the PSAL City Championship as a player for John Jay back in 1983, and later got his coaching start at none other than Tottenville High School. And if you think that's a small world, co-host Jose Franco has his own scars from that historic 1983 squad. Playing for DeWitt Clinton High School, Jose found himself pitching in relief during a brutal 14-2 semifinal loss to that very same John Jay team, giving up 3 runs in the process. So sit back, stretch it out, and get ready. Dylan Kane breaks it all down with Coach Jonathan Pinero next on the Developmental Gap.
Well, good morning, JP.
What's up, baby?
My name is Dylan Kane. I'm here with the Developmental Gap, which I co-host with Coach Jose Franco. Today, we're talking about compelling questions that force both myself and you, the coach, into our mental psyche, both in game, both, how we view the game, what our messaging is to our team and things like that. So I just want to dive straight into it. I got a couple of questions here. And to be fair, JP, I'm going to answer them myself because I know what it's like to be under the hot seat. So I want to keep this as organic as we can. So just relax, have some fun with me, and let's get into it. So the difference between philosophy and reality. Coach, every coach has their philosophy that they want to communicate to their program, right? You get them together in the fall, maybe you get them together in early winter in January, and you're trying to deliver this message, right? What is one part of the philosophy that tends to disappear first in the 7th inning of a 1-run game, winning run at second base? What does that reveal about you?
I wouldn't say it necessarily disappears. It's kind of like, what are we going to do here? For me, it's like coaching high school baseball, especially early in the season. I'm one of those that I'll ride out a pitcher or I'll ride out someone that's making mistakes in that moment because I need to see how they're going to learn from that or how are they going to triumph from that, how they're going to overcome that adversity. Part of our success with our playoff run was this year, out of all years at John Jay, was the first time I've ever used my entire lineup. We made, during the playoff run, we were using 15 to 16 guys, constant subs, who could run, who could field, who could hit, who would pitch hit. And I would say it's because during the course of the season, while we were starting multiple guys throughout the year, maybe not necessarily deserving to start in sense of their performance, I was trying to prepare them to be ready if they do have a moment or if they do have that thing. So I'm almost willing to, I don't want to say sacrifice a game, because if they weren't capable of winning it, I wouldn't have them out there.
Right.
But I'm willing to see how they're going to build from that. Can they overcome that adversity? Can they find a way to win? I always say good teams find a way to win, whether it's ugly or good. So can that athlete figure it out in that moment? And I'm willing to like ride that out early in the season, especially with our preseason games too.
It's really cool that you introduced them to that in January when the stakes are not as low in practice. So you can kind of apply that pressure both in a practice setting. So whenever you're asking them to do that months later, it's not the first time.
Exactly.
Really cool. Can you identify a coaching principle of your own that becomes negotiable when the stakes rise?
I would say principles for me are like, I would say like, I like my guys to be on time, be accountable, do those things, have good grades, be respectful adults or young adults right now in the classroom and on and off the field. So sometimes when those get challenged, it's like, it's tready to walk on sometimes, because sometimes it might be like one of your better players. And luckily for me, I had depth on my team, so I'm willing to see someone else do it.
Okay.
Sometimes you flirt with it, and sometimes, the reality is some players get a little more leeway than others. I try not to do that, but sometimes that's where it's tested in terms of my own principles. But I usually always side with doing the right thing and willing to lose or win in that fashion. So I would say those are the things that come up. Like if I have a student that comes late to school, or he's disrespectful to a teacher or something like that, I'm usually like, all right, you're going to sit today because you didn't just like follow our code. And then they're kind of like in that boat, like, what are we doing here? And then maybe it's another opportunity for a player that's not necessarily a starter to be successful. And I find something else about that player. But not every school in the city has that luxury of depth. And we had the depth. So I could kind of like follow my principles because of that. I think maybe if I didn't have as many depth, maybe it would make me question it a little bit. But I also can make the counter argument is if, even if you didn't have that depth, you get your point across as a coach to like, maybe this player is far better than this player, but I'm going to start this player because he's following what I want.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're setting the expectations, and in the process, you're creating discipline.
Yeah.
Because it's bigger. It's the game within the game. Like we have the game that we are playing on the field, and we use that as a tool to mold and to, lift kids towards their goals. But then you remove that, there's still something that we have to teach, right?
Yes.
Which is what you're already on top of doing, which is great. Kudos to you. I'm going to answer that myself with, I talk with Coach Franco often about, in big moments, sometimes I feel like we're juggling balance of the development and the competition, and how do we find that synergetic spot where it's like, sometimes it's calling time and I give the kids something to do that's going to challenge them. The result might not go our favor because sometimes it's the big moment, but it's like, it's a teaching moment too. And chances are they're going to see this moment again, maybe not today, but maybe not tomorrow, but like at some point in their career. And like you said, sometimes you got to just commit to that and go all into it and kind of live with that. And if you can live with that as a coach, I think you're in the right spot. You're not like leading with fear. You're not worried about, like, should I have done this? It's just like, no, you made a decision. You went all in. This is definitely, I work with Coach Franco a lot, and he frames these as like, these are Franco questions. This one, I'm just going to go ahead and warn you, is that, but it's good. It's good. It's at what point does coaching become an illusion of control? As coaches, we're often like controlling the lineup. We're making decisions at specific moments. Maybe we pull a guy or we put a hit and run or whatever it is. At what point does coaching become an illusion of control? And how do you know you're helping players versus simply making yourself feel useful as a coach?
I mean, I really think it depends on the team and the identity of your team and trying to figure that part out. I think that's the most challenging thing for me as a coach. Like I always say that each team I've had over the years at John Jay, it's been 5 years. Each team has had a different identity, even though there's been similar players on the team. Like if I have a group of juniors that become seniors and vice versa. So you still have players that return and the philosophies that I instill are still there, but the identity of the team and what they're good at or what they struggle with is different each year. And I think the illusion could be like, understanding that like maybe we don't need to bunt 100 times. Like I'm a big bunt guy for our team. So
you guys put down a few bunts I was at the Morris game with Coach, and I saw you guys put some bunts down, but saw some good things happen because of the bunts too.
Yeah.
Some, baseball's throwing the outfield now. A 1-run game becomes a 3-run game. And so I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. But you're totally right. So like, just to give a backstory on the course of our season, early in the year, we were terrible at bunting. And I would say like anyone that watches John Jay baseball, that's like our identity. Like we're going to small ball you to death. And we really struggled with it. I think we were at like past the halfway point. We play like 30 games. So on top of a 14-game league schedule, I book like 16 to 18 non-league plus the Monroe tournament. So you're looking at 30 high school baseball games. So you have a big sample size.
That's cool.
So when we were like 22 games in and we're a big squeeze team, big bunt team, I think we had less than 5 bunts executed like in game at that point in the season. And then I'm looking back at this, like, this is what we need to do to like make a playoff run, but we're not doing it right now. And kind of taking my philosophy out of like, you know what, let me let the kids play a little bit. I'm trying to control too much. I'm trying to make them successful too much. Let's try to like let them swing. Let's see if good things happen. And then we kind of started rolling a little bit after that. And then come playoff time, going back to that principle of like, hey, we're going to need this. Let's be ready to do it. And it kind of worked out for us at the right time. But I would say that's like the illusion of the control. It's like you think you're doing the right thing with like these hit and runs, telling guys to advance on dirty balls. And then, when it doesn't work your way, even though you're preaching that principle, I want to say you want to try to adapt with the game and adapt with your team. So at some point, it's like, let me do this a little bit less and see how it works. Because clearly after 20 games, it's not working right now. So let's try something else. So it's really hard to do that when you know that's your MO. And I would say that was like a part of me this season that came up.
Gotcha. And then by letting go of some of that control, you allow, I think, some trust to develop. You let your kids swing a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe they're a little less tense because there's something that they know the expectation is we got to do this, but it's not getting done. Maybe that creates some friction. Maybe that creates, some anxieties, whatever it is that's going on in the players. But then you free them up a bit, let them swing.
Yeah.
Then you come back to it and we're executing again.
Yeah.
Really cool. Really cool. This one is, tell us about a player you were completely wrong about, not slightly off, just you completely missed. And looking back, what was the flaw in that evaluation process for you? And it can be, individually, or maybe you and some other coaches got together and like had this and y'all missed.
So I'll talk about one player on our team in particular that had like a really good year. He won our most improved player this year. So we have a junior named Jackson Bartox. He's like a sidearm righty for us. He doesn't throw high velocity, but in high school baseball, you really just need to throw strikes. And he was really on the fence to make the team. And during the fall, I work with a coach named Brian Freeman, who he won't be coaching with me next year because he's taking the job at Kingsborough Community College to be the head coach there. He'll still be working on our school and help out on the background. But when we were discussing our rosters and like who should make the team, he was like, listen, and he's my pitching guy, so I really trust his input. He was like, listen, I think this kid can make the team if we make him a sidearm guy. Because over the top, we had a lot of arms, like there wasn't much to work with. So we had a realistic conversation with him, like, hey, like if you want to be on the team, this is what we need you to do. And we think you'll be good at it if you really buy into it. If you're not bought into it, it's going to be a struggle for you and it's not going to be quite right. So he bought into it, made the team, and then we really focused on it all winter, like throwing strikes, being consistent, how to take some off your pitches, how to add more, how to throw your slider from that arm slide. And he really bought into it. And to be honest with you, throughout the winter, I wouldn't have expected much from him throughout the season. And at one point, he became our most reliable reliever throughout the season. Like if we had a comfortable lead, by comfortable, I mean like 3 or 4 runs, we knew he would go out there and throw strikes. Like he's not going to just walk guys and mistakes are going to happen. I also looked at it as an opportunity for my team to be better defensively because the ball is going to be put in play. Exactly. And he just really excelled. He had an unbelievable year. He even, we threw him into the fire too. So, he had to pitch a couple innings against Stony Brook, which is the #1 team in New York. We had a game against them and he threw 3 innings against them and threw very well. He had 1 inning where they banged him around a little bit, but he had 2 pretty scoreless innings for them. And I would say against the best team in New York for a kid that wasn't going to make the team, that's very exceptional. Even though the result of like the runs that were given up, you would say that's not really great, but knowing where he's come from, I would say that sample size was good. And then leading into the season, I knew I could trust him. And then he overexcelled. So that was, I would say, is one player that like I doubted a little bit. And then he overexceeded all our expectations, even the teams. And he became one of our more reliable arms. And I really love stories like that for our team. I always say each kid on the team has a story on what they're trying to do. and what they need to be good at for the success of the team. And he like embodied that and did well with it. And it almost gave the spirit to the rest of the team, like, I could do this. And you know, you almost ride that. Like when when teammates see other teammates being successful that are on that borderline, your team rallies behind that. It's like the kid that's struggling with the bat and then he gets the big hit with 2 outs to score 2 runs. You know, that like uplifts your team. And in those moments, I'm like, we're going to win this game because of that moment, not because of anything else.
It's contagious.
Yeah, exactly.
Jump in and reflect back what I heard. A couple of things is a theme of what your response was, which was great. Collaboration, you know, starting with your pitching coach, you know, getting together, having that communication with, again, baseball, we have to communicate.
Yeah.
So you guys are practicing active communication that creates the trust that you have in your coaching staff, and then reflecting that in towards your team, and then that creating the trust of like the process of what it is that we're trying to do to get the most out of your skill set. And then what you just said, it bleeds into the rest of the team. So I just wanted to highlight, you know, trust, throwing strikes, collaboration, and communication. I think baseball is a very complex game, but if we keep it down to these simple things that I just heard and the themes of that answer, that's what we're after, right? We're after strikes, we're after defense, trust, and collaborate with both your coaches and your players.
Especially at the high school level. Like,
absolutely.
You know, pitchers are, I would say in today's era, pitchers are constantly chasing velo. And at the high school baseball level, or even borderline collegiate level, like you just really got to hit your spots.
Yeah.
Take some off your fastball, add some, throw the pitch a little backwards, and
trust your defense.
Exactly.
That's why we practice in and out. That's why we have a baseball field. That's why there's guys behind us. I want to ask, how many players right now would you say might be suffering from like that same circumstance where they have a player who maybe is being misevaluated, that with just this kind of, you know, approach, get the best out of it?
I would say I'm going to broaden it to like just all baseball players, not just like high school baseball players, but even like the younger guys, like even going down to like 10U. Okay. I would say the time to get competitive in baseball is the borderline would be like 11, 12U. I would say from 10U down, it should be just straight up development, even though you're developing all the way through. But I would say like 10U down, like if you're between 7U and 10U, just go play. Yeah. Like just make sure you're playing, get the opportunity to swing the bat, get opportunity to make plays, learn from your coaches. And then as a parent, evaluate your son and see how good they are. And then you could kind of scale what level they should be playing at. And then when you get to that competitive level, to have good conversations with your coaches, have good conversations with other baseball people that you necessarily trust to actually give you an honest evaluation about your son and how they're playing. And sometimes that's a hard conversation to have because you're going to hear things that might like hurt your feelings. Yeah. And for a younger player, it could really hurt their feelings. I would say at the high school level, you got to be ready to have that conversation. If you're trying to play a competitive varsity baseball team, you have to be willing to be like, have a conversation with your coach, and I could tell a player, hey, you're really bad at hitting a curveball. Like, hey, pitcher, you think you have a good curveball. It really doesn't work. We got to tune these things up if you want to be successful. So like for me, I would think it's to have those difficult conversations. If you really want to develop as a player, you have to be willing to own up to what you're not good at and go from there. It's the same thing with coaching, right? Like you have to understand what you're not good at as a coach or things that necessarily you don't like doing with your team. Right. Maybe we need to add that. Maybe the team needs it. And kind of like looking yourself in the mirror and being honest with yourself, I think is the most important thing. And just to have trustworthy coaches to give you that honest opinion with no hard feelings. And sometimes that's very difficult to have.
Absolutely. So it's important to surround yourself with good coaches that get the best out of you too. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That brings us to our next question. It's going to be a winning versus development format. If Coach Franco and I were to evaluate each decision that you've made over the course of the season, would the evidence suggest you prioritize development more than winning, or winning more than development?
I would definitely say I prioritize development. Obviously, for the high school baseball level, I'm trying to win as many games as possible. But like I said kind of earlier in our conversation, because I book so many games, especially in our non-league schedule, my selfish goal for our program is to eventually be a nationally ranked program and one of the top programs in New York City. So you have to play these hard games against Catholic schools, private schools that necessarily don't count towards your PSAL record. But I'm willing to throw my players into the fire against these teams. And whether it's up and down or whether they're successful or not, you're going to learn from that. Absolutely. And you're going to have to deal with that. And if you want to compete at the highest level, like you want to play against the best talent, even though maybe necessarily you don't stack up against them based on a physical standpoint or like your record standpoint or what's actually out there. Baseball's a beautiful game in the sense of anyone can get anybody.
Yeah.
Right. Like whether the guy's throwing 95 or 72, like that same guy could get you out.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like, the first round draft pick could go 0 for 3. Or he could go 3 for 3 with 3 bombs. It's just one of those games. So I really would say I focus on the developmental side because I have so many players, and I want to see all players play college baseball if that's their dream.
Yeah.
So if I got a guy that's not getting much playing time, am I really developing that player? And am I really giving them opportunities? So I try to give my players as many opportunities to be successful in games. And also the biggest thing is practice, right? So I practice all year round with my program from the moment they come in September up until the season goes out. So I would say I have a large sample size of where my players are at and having conversations. I don't know how many other high school coaches do it, but I do fall meetings and exit meetings for my players when they're done, just to discuss like, hey, this is what you were good at. This is what we need to work on. This is what I need you to do this season. And I think it makes the player adaptable. And then I'm trying to prepare them for college because when they get to college, it's very much like professional baseball. You're going to have like scouting meetings. You're going to have these evaluations. You're going to have tough coaches conversations when your coach is going to be like, hey, you're not a starter because you're not good at this, or I think this player's better. How are you going to handle that? So I'm trying to replicate as much as I can as like preparing you for that next level or the hardship of that comes with being a competitive baseball player.
Absolutely. And you're creating the repetition. So it's like not the first time they're experiencing that. We talked a lot about, being comfortable with our players, having our players feel comfortable in uncomfortable situations and conversations. This is the uncomfortable question I have for you after that one is, would your players agree with that answer you just gave?
I think so. Because I've definitely, one of the challenges of having a lot of players on your team is obviously only 9 can play. I have like 24 guys on the roster. So sometimes necessarily a player thinks they're in the lineup and then someone else is in the lineup. So that could create like, high school kids are high school kids. They want to be on the field. So sometimes in that initial moment, you could feel a little animosity or you could be a little upset. And it's like, how are you going to handle that? Are you going to cheer for your teammate or are you going to not? But then also getting them to understand, like, I need this player to get good too. You want your teammate to get better.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're a senior, but I need to get this sophomore ready when you're gone.
Yeah.
I need him ready for next season, or I need him ready for the big spot, come playoff time. So like, start trying to get the team to understand that and have those conversations like post game or pre-game. I think throughout the course of the season, my team got much better with it, but I'm constantly mixing around. So I would say that my team agrees with it because sometimes when I make decisions, they're like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just how it is. I mean, when I was a player, it was the same thing. I was like, coach, why are we putting okay, and go with it. So now that I'm a coach, I completely understand it now.
Yeah. Totally. Coming from coaching now, coming from Puerto Rico, what you just said, what you guys are doing is kind of what we did. You had so many guys. We had 30 plus guys, and we had 2 teams from those 30, but you wanted to be on those 15 to 22 spots where you were getting an opportunity to play against other academies or play on the weekends against these town teams.
Yeah.
And, you had guys who were really good at one thing and you knew like that was the middle infield for this day. That was a center fielder. You knew who was going to catch. But then there was moments where like, how do you get in the lineup as a player? And as a young player, as a 14, 15-year-old, I wasn't going to take the 18-year-old spot. That was his spot. But what could I do in game, pinch run here, come into big spot here. But I didn't know anything about that till I got down there.
Yeah.
14, 15, I was like, well, I go from everyday starter, like travel baseball. Like I'm the guy. Like, what do you mean? I'm going 3 for 4. I'm doing this. And all of a sudden I'm never playing.
Yeah.
The reality is get good at this, support your teammate, learn how to steal signs, learn how to see what the other team is doing, where the outfielders and communicating all that to the starters.
Yeah.
So when you are the guy, you're expecting the same thing from the guys on the bench. So it's cool. Right. You guys are doing that. That's super awesome. Next thing we got, we talk about fear in baseball, fear of failure, fear as the driver, big moments. Are we ready for it? This is a question about fear. When you're coaching third base, managing pitchers, or setting a lineup, what coaching decision scares you the most? And what does that fear say about your identity as a coach?
That's a great question, honestly.
That's a Coach Jose Franco question.
I think it is. It's a great question because I think you would be lying if you say if you're not fearful or nervous. I would describe it more as nervous than fearful.
Okay.
Because I feel confident in any decision I make in terms of like what I'm trying to put out there to win a baseball game. So I wouldn't say I'm fearful of the decision. I would say I'm a little bit more nervous to see what the outcome is. Those moments do happen. It's like I described with the bunting. It's like, is this the situation to bunt? Do I let him hit? Or if I did let him hit, why didn't I make him bunt? Or maybe I should have stole second and got him here. I'll give one example of something that happened throughout the season. So I went to a coaches convention in Mohegan Sun. It's called the World Baseball Coaches Convention. So tons of coaches, college coaches, pro coaches, they speak about things. So I heard one of the Mets infield coaches at the end of his segment, he spoke about having 5 infielders. He explained this defense. He was like, hey, late in the game, he goes, I don't have the courage to do it. He's like, I've never done it, but here's something you could do. You could put 3 infielders on your pull side, infield up to prevent the run from scoring. Put 3 infielders. So if you have a righty up, put 3 infielders on the left side, leave 2, put center and right, and leave left field wide open. And, everyone at the convention is like, wait, what? And then he's like, I never had the courage to do it, but here are the numbers by the MLB. When big leaguers hit the ball, 30% of the time they roll over, and the other 28 or whatever the number was, which was still fairly high, they miss APA. So you're talking about over 60% of their miss hits being a rollover or APA. And when they square it up, it's lower than 50%. Maybe they beat you, but the odds are kind of in your favor. He goes, again, it's a scary sight to see. So I tried it with high school baseball. And my logic was the same thing. It's like a high school baseball kid's going to see left field wide open, and they'd be like, oh, I'm going to bury it. And then I would get them to roll over. So we did it a couple times this season, and majority of the time we did it, we're in our non-league games. So there were non-pressure situations, because if we lose or we win, it doesn't hurt our record. Maybe it affects in terms of ranking the program, but we did it in the division. To win the division, we played Brooklyn Tech, and they had one of their best hitters up, their shortstop, who's I'm pretty sure he works out here with a bunch of the Husky guys. His name is Scott. He's their shortstop, and he came up and he hit every ball to his pull side going up, but got hits, clean hits.
Right.
So he was coming up with the tying run at third base.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, here we go. We're going to do it. And a game that actually matters. This is to win the division. So we put 3 guys on the left side, left a center fielder and a right fielder. And, since we experimented with it, our players felt confident in it, which was great because we got to see what it looked like.
Yeah.
And his first swing, he took an absolute G-hack and missed it. But you could tell that he's like, I want to bury that left side. Then he kind of simplified his approach, which was good for him. He ends up hitting a laser right at the center fielder, like a line drive, and it gave him no time for the kid to tag up. And the run didn't end up scoring. So he didn't necessarily hit it into our 3-man defense.
Right.
But the numbers played itself out. He hit it right at center. The run didn't score.
That
so
33% was field oppo.
Yeah. So it ended up working out. So that was an instance where it's like, all right, am I really going to do this in this moment, in a big game like this? And I kind of went with it and it worked out. But also those are those kind of things that if it doesn't work out, you look like what a moron. You're playing with fire. So, but
the Billy Beans of high school baseball.
So you're playing with it, but in that moment when we made the decision, and again, this is something I talk with my staff mid-game. One thing that's great about my staff at John Jay is while we're making decisions mid-game, we're constantly talking between innings. What are the changes we can make? Who needs to be pitch hit for? If this guy gets on base, who we're going to run for? So it was a decision that we came to together. I suggested it and they were like, let's go with it. And we ran with it and it worked. So it's helpful when you have a staff that believes in your decision to give you that let's go for it. But with any coaching decision, there's good and bad, right? So you got to be willing to live with it. And that's part of being a good coach. And that's part of being an understanding coach. Sometimes you're going to make decisions that don't necessarily work out.
Absolutely. I heard that instead of fear, we have nerves. And I'm an actor too. I don't know if you knew that. And I think that whenever you get material or before coach presses, play on or action on the camera or they're calling for top of show, nerves are good. Nerves are normal. Those make us feel alive. I tell players all the time, I have a 12-year-old kid who's coming up with the bases loaded. He's the 9-hole hitter. And I say, this is why you're in the 9-hole hitter. This is why you're my 9-hole guy. But you can see it all over him. He's just and it's fear versus nerve. I was like, it's okay to be nervous. How do we channel the nerves to use for whether it's the material, whether the camera, or in the sake of baseball, for competitive nature. Like
Yeah.
we're allowed to compete. This is where you get to turn those nerves and turn them to an 11 and go.
Yeah.
So really cool that you decipher between fear and nerves. And then two, practicing this statistical, approach of like running the analytics and hearing it from coaches, putting it on its feet in practice, or rehearsing. That way, whenever it's in the game, there's trust, back to trust.
Yeah.
You guys are constantly communicating like, are we really going to do this? And it's like, yeah, we're really going to. And then you go and you commit. So that's really cool. And the players, I think we talk about this all the time. The players, they see this. They see the body language of what we're talking about, and how we're talking is going to bleed into exactly how they play, which is both a good thing and a bad thing sometimes. Really cool.
Before Coach Jonathan Pinheiro shares some of the reactions his coaching style receives from parents, it's worth pausing to acknowledge one of the most difficult realities in youth and high school baseball. Development is rarely challenged by bad intentions. More often, it's challenged by good intentions. In The Power of Now in Baseball, Coach Jose Franco writes about the difficulty of helping players and families embrace a developmental philosophy that asks them to confront uncertainty. That sounds simple enough until the game gets involved. Baseball is subjective. Every decision is subjective. Every lineup is subjective. Every bullpen decision is subjective. Every teaching point is subjective. At best, coaches are making decisions based on what they believe gives their players the highest probability of success in the present moment. But uncertainty is uncomfortable. Human beings naturally seek certainty, even when certainty doesn't exist. And when outcomes don't go our way, it becomes tempting to create simple, binary explanations. The coach likes this player. The coach dislikes that player. My son isn't playing because of politics. My daughter isn't succeeding because of opportunity. The coach is right. The coach is wrong. Binary narratives are attractive because they remove complexity. More importantly, they remove accountability. Because once we've decided we already know why something happened, the conversation ends. And so does the learning. The difficult question, the developmental question, rarely asks, who is to blame? Instead, it asks, what might we be missing? How do we get better at the things we don't think we're bad at? How do we identify blind spots that are invisible to us precisely because they're our blind spots? For many players and parents, that's an uncomfortable place to live. It requires self-reflection. It requires humility. It requires the willingness to consider that effort and improvement are not always the same thing. And perhaps most importantly, it requires a safe environment where mistakes, confusion, and difficult feedback are not viewed as attacks, but as opportunities. This tension exists on nearly every field in America. Parents want what's best for their children. Coaches want what's best for their players. Players want opportunities to succeed. Yet all three groups are often operating from different definitions of success. That doesn't make anyone malicious. It makes development difficult, because coaching is rarely about teaching what players already know. It's about helping them discover what they don't know they don't know. And sometimes, the very feedback that creates the most resistance is the feedback most capable of creating growth. With that in mind, Coach Jonathan Pinheiro shares some of the challenges, misunderstandings, and reactions that can emerge when a coach asks players and families to embrace a developmental process that isn't always comfortable, but is often necessary.
You're right. This guy might not be the best left fielder, or this guy might not be the best third baseman, but he's 12 years old. We don't know
Right.
where he's good at yet. Let's find out.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing to find out with trial and error.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to sacrifice games. And like we were saying when we first walked in, the games could get ugly based on development, because you're testing something out. You need to figure it out in that moment, or that player needs to figure it out. So I would say, like, a bad critique that I've gotten over the years from parents. I'm back to coaching summer ball with the RBI Mets. It hasn't popped up yet with that program, but in the past when I used to coach, it would come up with like, I didn't think we needed to do that. It's like, well, I really don't care about winning this game on July 12th at 8 a.m. in New Jersey for a random tournament. I need this kid to be ready for a pressure situation when he plays high school, or if he has the luxury of playing college. You need to put them in that spot. So I would say that's one. I would say at the high school level, for parents, I would be like playing time. Right? Like, parents are always like, hey, why isn't my son playing? The first thing that's wrong with that conversation at the high school level is the player needs to be having this conversation, not the parent. So if they could like step away and not do that, you as the parent could have a conversation with your son and say, hey, listen, why aren't you playing? And then hopefully the son has a good response for you. There could be one of two reactions. Your son could be honest and be like, well, I'm not performing, or I showed up to practice late, or I'm not doing well. That could be the honest conversation. Or it could be the second one, and the player could say, I don't know. I feel like he doesn't like me. That happens too.
Yeah.
But how will we know if that player doesn't have an honest conversation with his coach? And I really think on the high school level, they need to stay away from that.
Yeah, totally. So having ownership. So we're talking about, criticism from parents. Coach JP brought up, having honest conversations with players to coaches and players to parents. So it, makes it a little bit, I don't want to use the word easier, but just makes it honest, right? Having that honest conversation with the parents. So there's no miscommunication. There's no false expectations. And I think the kids taking ownership, like you just said, of having those kind of conversations will kind of smoothen that out.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a question titled The Inherited Blind Spot. What is something your favorite coach taught you, right, that later you realize was incomplete, maybe outdated, or didn't work for you, or just simply was wrong?
That's a tough one. I would say that your best athlete can't necessarily move around. That they're stuck in one.
They can play multiple positions.
Yeah. Not necessarily leaving them stuck in one spot. So for example, let's say my shortstop is a really good pitcher.
Yeah.
But he's mainly a shortstop, but he could certainly pitch at the high school level. And a pop-up goes to the infield, or a ground ball is to the right side. Go get the ball. You're no longer a pitcher. You are the best athlete.
Yeah.
Go get it. I don't need it to be the catcher.
We're getting into, for the viewers, the pop fly priority. You practice shortstop's ball over this, that, outfield over infield. But if you got a guy on the mound, you're saying it's an athlete, and you got a third baseman who's playing back or playing where they're playing, that's a more difficult play for them, even though, by the technical pop fly priority call, that's third base ball, you're saying go get it.
Just go get it. You're the guy. If you're the best athlete, just go be who you are.
Go make the play.
Go make the play. Get it. If you want to be the best player, you want the ball. So why leave it up to chance? I'm going to go get it unless someone calls me off. And then that becomes the trust factor. If a player's calling you off, you trust them to go make the play. But if it's that borderline ball, don't look around. Yeah. You're the guy. Go be the guy.
Yeah.
So I would say that's one little thing that might be different. I played for Jerry Katsky for a long time. And when things like that, he would get on the positional guys of why didn't you go call him off? He can't be fielding that. And looking back at it, I'm if that guy's a good athlete, just go field it. It's the same pop-up he would catch at shortstop. Mm-hmm. There's nothing different about it. He's just in a different location on the field.
Yeah.
And, if that play does happen, people be like, hey, you got to call that. You got to call that. Whereas now when I'm in that moment, I'll be like, hey, you need to be in the vicinity. You can't shy away from that. You can't expect him to do that all the time, because there's going to be a moment where it's a straight PO on the mound, and I really don't trust him to catch the ball.
Yeah.
But I think that's a little moment like that. It's if you're the best athlete, get every ball you can.
Yeah.
Don't leave it up to chance. It's oh, I thought it was his ball. No.
Yeah.
No.
I think it goes back to, we talked a couple episodes back about just situational awareness and present moment. It's a big thing we talk about here on the Developmental Gap, where Coach JP just mentioned knowing who's where, present moment, who's pitching, a lefty, righty, athletic, more athletic. And then how does that dictate my decision-making, my process, before the pitch is thrown at wherever I'm playing? I want to talk a little bit more on, I'm a baseball guy, but I come from the strength conditioning world as well. So for me, it was, the biggest, I'm never doing that again after I learned. I was taught to static stretch.
Yeah.
To get up, run, and then immediately just, slow my heart rate back down and then stretch. Whereas I tell pitchers, I tell catchers, you got to get the blood flowing, and you want to, get to a 6 to 7 and 8, as far as an RPE, you want to feel like that before the game. That way, whenever the game is happening, you're already there, and static stretching is something that you would do after a game. So for mine, my taboo would be before a game, getting loose means movement.
Yeah. I got another one.
Yeah.
Another one would be I think this is the story for any player growing up in Brooklyn playing for the Bonnies or youth service or any one of those teams, is what conditioning looked like. You would just run forever, and run for a long time. And that was the theory of that's going to get you better. That's going to get you stronger. And now you would say like, no, like instead of running for 20 minutes, let's do 8 minutes worth of sprints.
Right.
Would be more beneficial in terms of your development than running for 20 minutes necessarily. Is that 20 minutes still helpful? Yes. I think long distance running, I was also a long distance runner. I ran track and field in college too. I would say that it helps with injury prevention, keeping your body fresh and all that good stuff. But in terms of like baseball's a fast twitch game, right? You need power and you need to be ready to move quick left to right. I'm not really moving quick if I'm just, jogging around for 20 minutes.
Right.
But if you said, hey, let's do 8 minutes worth of sprints, we're going to sprint for 1 minute. You're going to get a minute rest, and then we're going to sprint again that would be something that makes sense. And I think growing up, that was non-existent. Like we ran for a long time. All right, we're going to do 15 suicides today. Yeah. Whereas that's really changed. I would say that's another one.
Cool. Yeah. The present moment audit. Take us inside a real game situation, runner on second base, one out in the game. What is the actual conversation happening between the ears in your head? Not the polished version. Give us the OG reality.
Yeah. Raw cut. Okay. So usually in that moment, there's a couple words that I can't say on the air, mixing in with other coaches. Like what we're going to do, how we're going to handle the situation, when it first happens it's analyzing the situation. Who's up? Who do we have in the field? Then the conversation is like, where do we not want this ball hit to? That'll hurt us. And where's that guy positioned? Maybe we could set him up to be successful in that play. So positioning would be the follow-up from like, once we analyze who's up, who's pitching, and where are our guys positioned. So that would be a moment. That'll be a conversation we have with the coaches. The next thing will be like, is this a batter do we actually want to face? Like, do we want to just give them straight 4, or are we going to kind of make them chase? Like, how are we going to handle that? Then the next step will be like, do we trust the pitcher to execute? If we are going to pitch this guy, do we trust him to work at like pitch borderline to him, make him chase? That's the conversation. Do we have another guy that might be better than this pitcher in this moment? Would be the next conversation, and then go from there. And when you really think about it, when that situation happens, you really got to have this conversation in like 30 seconds. Yeah. Right.
Unless game.
Game. It happens really quick. So luckily for me, our coaches, we always sit next to each other. If I could describe how we sit as coaching staff, we all sit in the front of the dugout, right next to each other. So when these moments are happening, and I'm one of the coaches that thinks ahead, and I'm like, yo, if this guy gets a second, what are we going to do? When this guy comes up, what are we going to, and so we kind of like cheat before it happens and hope it doesn't. But if it does, we're kind of like almost prepared and beat to the conversation. So hopefully we can make the best decision to make our team successful. Yeah. So I would say like in the moment, it's just like a lot of conversations, probably a little bit of cursing in between of like what we think will actually happen. And then, like we said, live and die with your decision, like, and go from there. I think we had constant moments this year where we, switch guys, and then we had moments where we ride that guy out. And it's tough to make those decisions. I'll give one example. I'll give 2 examples during our playoff run. When we played Grand Street, in game 3, we had one of our best pitchers on the mound, our ace, and he was struggling. It wasn't his best outing. The ump was a little tight, but it wasn't his best performance. And there was a go-ahead run on third base with 1 out. And, we decided to pull our best pitcher to put in what we believe is our best reliever in that moment. And the conversation was like, we need a strikeout, or we need a soft contact. And we think that guy gives us the best chance to get that in that moment. But then you're making this decision so early for a player that didn't necessarily give us more than 5 innings throughout the whole season. We used him more in a relief role. And we were just like, when you're in the playoff, those things kind of go out the window. You kind of ride out the moment. Yeah. So we had to make a tough decision very fast. And we ultimately made that decision. And again, it goes back to being a competitor. My ace pitcher at the time was really not thrilled about that decision. He's like, hey, I want to be out here. I can get this out, which I love. Yeah. I want him to do that. But, I had to make the tough decision to take out this senior and rely on a sophomore. And luckily for us, it worked out. The sophomore ended up getting out of that situation. held it down, and we ended up winning and getting a go-ahead run in the 7th and eventually closing the door. And then the same situation popped up again because the tying run went to third base in the bottom of the 7th with nobody out, with that same sophomore who's 90 pitches in. And it's like, do we get another guy up? And we were like, nah, this is our guy. Like, we got to ride it out. And luckily for us, it worked out. In the championship, we had our pitcher, Wade Middleton, who was excellent all season. We had a 1-run lead. There was a runner on third base, and we faced the same decision. Like, do we go to that reliever or do we leave Wade out there? And at the time, he only had given up 1 run. He was really around the zone. We felt confident in him. So we let him go out there. I mean, the kid ended up getting a hit to tie the game in the championship game, but I wouldn't say that was the wrong decision.
Right.
I would say he looked good. It looked promising. We trusted him. It just worked out in the other team's favor. With
baseball.
every decision, exactly, it's baseball. With every decision comes a result. You just hope the result is in your favor. And we had an instance in the semifinal where it was in our favor, and then we had an instance in the championship where it wasn't in our favor. And you kind of got to live with that.
Just based off what you share with me about how you guys trust your processes, you guys have collaboration, you guys are communicating both in-game, pre-game, obviously, but then like pre-situation. Like like if this happens, we walk a guy here, guy gets a bleeder here, we're going to go here. So forecasting how the game might be played out and being ready for those moments. Your internal dialogue is focused on developing the player always, even to the point of like going to a younger arm, a sophomore guy who's the future, versus taking your guy out in a way of like knowing that competitor wants the baseball, but also understanding that you have a program, you have a culture, you have a process, and you guys are sticking to it and going with a younger guy, because that's just going to develop that guy too.
Yeah.
He's going to have another moment, in the future, that this moment's really he's going to draw from this moment to bring to the next one. And I've seen your work here at the Foundry with the kids, like to the point where I saw you, you have your note cards.
Yeah.
Like you're a detailed guy. And I'm like, I was telling Coach Franco, I was like, he's not running his infield drills. He's running his infield drills while he's giving its messaging. So kudos to you. I know you're all about development. That's what we're all about. Thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing here in Brooklyn, New York, and the baseball world in general. Jonathan, take some time to introduce yourself, your path to John Jay, the current state of your program. If we look at your entire baseball journey from when you first fell in love with the game to standing out in front of the dugout today, what is the biggest shift in your personal approach, and why? And who are you when the uniform comes off versus while you're wearing the uniform?
Okay. For me, I grew up playing baseball in Brooklyn. Brooklyn Foundry is on 12th Street. I grew up right on 15th Street. So when this place was first built, I wish it was here. I grew up playing baseball at the park right down the road. That's where I started playing. I started playing baseball when I was 6, all the way up and through college. And then I played with the Bonnies from the time I was 14 till I aged out. I went to Bishop Ford High School. It doesn't exist no more, but I went to Bishop Ford High School where I played 4 years of baseball there. After that, I went to LIU Brooklyn, where I was a 2-sport Division I athlete. I ran track and field, and I played baseball there. I did baseball for 2 years there, and I did track and field for 4. I did 2 years of independent ball, and then I got into coaching. I started my coaching career with the Bonnies and Lincoln High School. My first summer team I ever coached, I was 20 years old, and I was coaching 16-year-olds. So I was only 4 years older than these kids. I was also a player coach when I was a player with the Bonnies, so I got experience there, coaching like my own team that I was on, which was a very interesting dynamic. And I coached at Lincoln High School, where I coached with Herbie Cruz Jr. I learned a lot from him. And then when COVID happened in 2020, I started working at Millennium High School for a little bit, and I met up with Brian Freeman, and we had a conversation about collaborating together to build like a powerhouse program, because the athletic merger was happening at John Jay. So we had the athletic merger, and we agreed that if we started coaching together, we could build a really good team very fast. And that's kind of what happened there. And for me as the coach, I would say my coaching I'm a result of the coaches I played for.
Right.
I'm literally their makeup. Jerry Catsby, Mike Hanrahan, Linton Dyer, Mike Joseph, Herbie Cruz Sr., all these coaches I played for, I would say I'm a mix of all of them. And the reason I use that is because growing up, I would say coaches were a little bit tougher in the sense of how they spoke to you and what they expected from you. And I love that because I felt it pushed me to be better. But I also understand the reality of how that affects players and how they could take it. So I want to say I'm a little bit of a hybrid of in between. I kind of try to have a feel for who can I push and who can I have a conversation with? Who do I need to like talk to a little bit softer? Who do I need to yell at? So I would say I'm like that little bit of a hybrid coach when it comes to the conversations with players. In terms of the on-field stuff, I'm very much like, we got to work. And that's a result of the coaches I played for. Like, if you want to get good, you got to get good at this. If you want to be a good high school player, you got to make the routine play. And I'm all about those philosophies. And I love using one-liners. I'm a big one-liner coach. So my high school baseball coach used to say, we don't make excuses, we make adjustments. So like a kid, I'm late, I went to the bathroom. We don't make excuses, we make adjustments. You should have used the bathroom sooner. That ball took a bad hop. You create the hop. Like, like those kind of things of not letting the player like find an excuse, like trying to find a way to own it. And how could you change it? Even though necessarily they might not be able to, but being that makeup. So I'm really a product of all the great coaches I played for. And I just want to instill that message to all my players. I love this game. And when I take off the uniform, I don't think I'm a different person. I'm still a coach. Like when I play softball with my friends or I hang out with my friends, I'm still throwing out one-liners. Or when my friends tell me they had a bad day at work, I'm like, dude, you'll be fine. You got a job. We'll do it the next day. Like, so I'm very much still a coach, even when I take off the uniform, which could be a little frustrating for some people because I'm too positive at times.
They're like, when are you going to turn that off?
The lights dim inside the Brooklyn Baseball Foundry and another conversation comes to a close. One truth remains unchanged. Development is always a choice. Today, Dylan Kane sat down with John Jay varsity baseball head coach Jonathan Pinheiro. But beneath the stories, strategies, and experiences was a deeper question, one every player must answer for themselves. Who are you becoming? The answer isn't found in a batting average, a radar gun reading, a college logo, or a social media highlight. It's found in the quiet moments between those things. It's found in the choices players make when nobody is watching. Inside the Foundry, you'll often see players stepping into the hit tracks cage. To some, it's simply a fun way to compete with friends. To others, it's something more. Like a traveler checking landmarks along a difficult journey, hit tracks provides immediate feedback, a glimpse into whether the work is moving them closer to where they want to go. The numbers don't judge. They simply reveal. The ball either jumped off the bat or it didn't. The feedback is immediate. The opportunity to improve is immediate. And that may be the larger lesson. Every day, every player wakes up and decides which hat they'll wear, the indifferent hat, the reactive hat, or the proactive hat. The indifferent player waits. The reactive player responds. The proactive player prepares. The indifferent player hopes things improve. The reactive player adjusts after problems appear. The proactive player seeks feedback before problems become habits. That choice exists today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. The folks at the Developmental Gap podcast aren't chasing followers, likes, algorithms, or external validation. The goal has always been simpler and much harder: to create a space where players, parents, and coaches can embrace uncomfortable but constructive feedback. Because growth accelerates when honesty replaces ego. Because development speeds up when players learn not only to work harder, but to work smarter. And because every meaningful breakthrough begins with a willingness to confront what needs improvement. For those willing to wear the proactive hat, Coach Jose Franco has made available a free resource he originally wrote for himself: The Mental Game Within the Mental Game, available free to download at stoopjuice.com. Because development isn't reserved for the gifted, it's available to anyone willing to be honest enough to learn. Until next time, keep showing up. Keep asking difficult questions. Keep embracing feedback. And remember, the gap between where you are and where you want to be is often smaller than it appears, but only if you're willing to do the work.